Well, welcome to Last Call Reviews.
Hello, this is Last Call Reviews.
Last Call Reviews, Episode 3. This time we're late reviewing, is it Gareth Edwards?
Gareth Edwards.
Gareth Edwards.
Godzilla.
2014 reboot.
The movie is called Godzilla.
Yeah, the movie is Godzilla. We saw this a few days ago, so I apologize for a late review.
About 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We saw this movie.
I saw it 6 months ago before they even finished post.
We were very early, and this is a very late review.
Yeah.
For some quick backstory, we're both Godzilla fans.
Yeah.
Of the original Toho series.
Just for some background, obviously anyone out there who's a Godzilla fan knows that this has been in talks for a long time. There are a lot of Godzilla fans.
A year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah,
at least.
This guy, Gareth Edwards, he made Monsters, this low budget, I think $500,000 indie film about monsters living in, and he made it very much a human story, and they hired him for Godzilla, and he's a fan, and he was going to bring this new approach that was more like the Toho films. So this has been hyped for a long time. The trailers... the trailers were huge. It just showed big shots of destroyed cities and buildings and heavy lines of dialogue about death and destruction, and Godzilla is this force of nature. Conspiracy, yeah, a lot of really interesting stuff, because we have a lot to say. I just think a lot of people have already said a lot of the things about it.
So first, do we want to list our favorite sequel that's not the original, just to get background on us?
What kind of
what we like in Godzilla movie.
What do you want out of Godzilla? Mm-hmm. What's your most satisfying Godzilla type?
And I don't think I was seen all 28 films.
I have.
Oh, you've seen all 28?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Matthew had them.
Okay.
My friend had them.
I've seen about 16 of them.
Yeah.
So I've got catching up.
I'm not good memory on all of them, but I have seen all. I know that he owned every one. My favorites are Godzilla vs. Destroyer, Mechagodzilla, Space Godzilla, a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, Mechagodzilla is really fun.
I'm a big fan. This is excluding the 1954 original.
There's no competition.
Yeah, that's just a great film. But the sequels and the Godzilla franchise, I'm very big on those specific films, the ones that have a bit more plot to them, the one that has a bit more back and forth, a villain that's very much Godzilla's equal, and I like just the tone of those ones. Very much like the 80s, 90s era of Godzilla I'm pretty big on. From Godzilla 1985 and on, about up to the point where the Millennium Trilogy, before it started the Millennium film, which I'm not as big on as a lot of people, like Final Wars and so on, but I don't think they're bad.
I think my favorite sequel was probably Mothra.
Yeah,
the first Mothra one.
No, it's a classic.
Godzilla versus Mothra, vice versa, and then actually Godzilla Raids Again, the immediate sequel, I think was really fun, despite some weird dubbing. And
throwing it out there, just gonna say, Destroy All Monsters is really fun. If you just want to, if you want to get an entry level idea of Godzilla, I think that's a really good place to start. Actually, you can watch that movie because it's just fun. I'll say this because this is gonna be weird because we differ a bit. I don't think huge, but we do differ a bit. He's more positive on it, and I'm more negative on it, for sure. We both agree on a lot of the things, the goods and the bad.
The good, to begin with, is the first 20, 25 minutes of the movie is pretty much everything that you want from the trailers. As far as setup goes.
I agree. No.
Bryan Cranston is really good in it, even though he's not given too much. But it's just enough, and he's really giving.
Yeah, let's talk about the positives first. I'd rather talk about the
tone. I think is very Spielbergian in a very good way. It's actually really fun.
Yeah,
it's serious. It's kind of heavy at the beginning, but then it gets this really fun attitude with him and Aaron Taylor Johnson,
the mystery, and
the government.
No, there's a scene where they're walking and they're wearing gas masks because they're in a radiation zone.
It's like I Am Legend or something.
Yeah,
kind of sad.
And these dogs run by, and it's very
A+.
No, it's very cool in the relation between the two of them. I'll give you what the synopsis basically is, that Bryan Cranston's character very early in the movie, like we're talking early first scene really, works at a nuclear power plant. Is in Japan with his son and wife. This
is destroyed.
Basically, this isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailer. His wife dies at the power plant. I'm not, because that's in the trailer. They show her die. She dies at the power early on because something just happened and he doesn't know what it was. His son's traumatized by it. We skip years later, like 15 years later.
Bryan Cranston's investigating. His son's like, "No, Dad."
Yeah. Aaron Taylor
Leave this alone, Dad.
Aaron Taylor Johnson's character Ford Brody. Basically, he gets out of the military after he's gone 14 months. He disarms bombs. He goes back to his wife. He gets a call. Bryan Cranston got arrested in Japan for going on the nuclear site that happened 15 years ago. So Aaron Taylor Johnson goes out to get him, and then they start to unravel the mystery, find out what's going
on.
on.
They go on a wacky adventure.
There's some crazy guys, and then there's monster attacks, and I don't want to spoil anything for those who haven't seen the movie yet, like how it all. Although I don't think there's much to spoil, but there is surprises in the movie. Maybe you didn't know from the trailers or something.
Yeah, there's a few actually little twists or turns.
The good things for me. The design of Godzilla and the effects.
It's pretty much the best since, well, I guess the last movie before Roland Emmerich's. I guess he had it perfected at that point.
Good CG, great cinematography, really good sound design, good sound mixing. On a technical level, it's a pretty impressive movie. Bryan Cranston, very good.
The scope of the film was huge.
Yeah, very ambitious film.
Which is good. I think Godzilla could have used more of that throughout the series.
Overall, like, visually and put together, pretty impressive little thing.
Pretty ambitious for what it is.
Yeah. And I like the cast. I like the setup. I like quite a bit of the decisions thought, like, conceptually. The film, I really like a lot of, like, its ideas of trying to be a modern Jaws with nature and Godzilla. I think that's a really interesting concept. And I like Gareth Edwards trying to go back to 70s and 80s blockbuster thrillers more like that.
It really wanted to capture that feeling of wonder.
No, it's very Super 8. Basically, the reason I don't like the movie a lot is I think it's a very, very poorly written script with very poorly fleshed out characters, especially Ford Brody, who I think is one of the worst protagonists I've seen in a while. Most boring. I'm not going to say word, but boring. Which is almost worse to me, because he's really uninteresting, and Aaron Taylor Johnson doesn't get shit to do. It's a very boring performance. It's a poorly judged character. I get what they were trying to do with him. Like, I get the idea. They were trying to make him very stoic and traumatized by past events in his life and have him live in the present that way and reflect how he treats his family with parallel with his father. And
how I see a lot of that, if we just want to address it all now rather than go back and forth, which I was going to plan on doing, but we may as well just address all of it at once, but back and forth. How I saw what they're trying to do with the character, show him as this military hardened guy that's trying to have this tough exterior and not be affected by his past or the circumstances around him as an army soldier. And I think there's some really good moments with that, like when he was talking to Shortstop. And he said the train's going to come back on in 10 seconds after there's a power outage. Sensibility in the character that I think Aaron Taylor Johnson, as an actor, could have brought out if he was given more to do. And there's glimpses of it, but I don't think it was ever fully realized. You knew his motivation, but him as a person you didn't get much of.
This director is not an actor's director. It becomes very clear as the longer the movie goes on, too. Because even the Bryan Cranston performance, which is the best of the movie, that feels more Bryan Cranston than anything else. It feels like he adds a lot to it. The movie kind of gets on this autopilot with the actors after a point, and a lot of it's not their fault. They're giving very exposition dialogue that isn't nuanced.
Well, the whole thing is very plot based. Everything in the movie is about driving the plot forward.
Yes, which is fine. I love Christopher Nolan films, and he gets criticized for that a lot, saying lines of exposition. I just don't think the film does that great of a job of organically growing the characters while the exposition is being said. Brody as a character, to me, doesn't really go through much change or development through the movie. He seems to care more about other things happening than he does about his own wife and son at points, and I'm cool with that, but they don't explore it.
I think structurally that was the narrative backbone for the movie. They're trying to convey that Bryan Cranston, he was more work-oriented, then he lost his wife, and then his life was about finding out what happened to his wife, and he wasn't there for his son. And then later on, at a certain point, he tells Aaron Taylor Johnson, hey, go talk to your family or something. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson's trying to go talk to his family or something, but monsters get in the way. Yeah. So he's trying to go be a dad and stuff. But and I think that's a lot of it. Him trying to get back as an army soldier, being away, is kind of an allegory for that. Yeah, you have to do things in life, but ultimately, family is what you go home to.
No, it's all there. It's just execution is the issue.
It gives you exactly everything you kind of need for textbook structuralism, but not much more.
No, it's. I mean, this isn't an ego thing. This is. Like, I feel like I could have wrote a better script in parts of this movie than the guy who wrote it. I don't blame the director because he didn't write the script. There was 4 screenwriters. They even had Frank Darabont come in at one point, who I don't think I'm more talented than or anything, but I do think this could have used another rewrite or a better script. I wish in pre-production they had went through more and figured out the characters more and fleshed out more. Because it's really to me the biggest fault in the movie is the emotional investment in the characters, not the movie itself or whatnot. The main characters, the story focus point, the Brody family and all that, really narratively to me isn't handled well in the structure, especially what they do with Bryan Cranston's character and his wife and how they set that all up, I think is very poorly executed and kind of kills the momentum of the film for me at points. I think the film builds up to these moments and then the director doesn't know how to handle them and take them into the next level to where they become great movie scenes. I think he just kind of finds a way to maneuver them around and then just kind of make it work and then meander to the next scene. And I'm pretty negative once the movie gets past the first act. I think the middle act's the weakest part of the movie. I think the first act and last act are pretty okay, but the middle act where it's just the military talking a lot about the creature and going from place to place and Aaron Taylor Johnson, it's very procedural, A to B. Like he said, it's like a video game. Like, you get a goal and you have to go somewhere and get from point A to point B, and you follow all these characters.
And Aaron Taylor Johnson's character is more of a surrogate for the audience to live through.
Yeah, it's like a first-person thing, and you go on these missions, and he's going to all these, like, semi-contrived. It's not totally horrible, but some of it's contrived how he gets to some of these places. He's always kind of around monster attacks.
And I think that's where the divisiveness of this film comes into play, is that it promised a lot more from the trailers. You might expect more. And in the end, at least for me, it became a very prototypical Godzilla film, where it was everything the other movies done with a bigger budget and Hollywood actors, and not much more. As a big blockbuster, as a film for criticism or film theory, is obviously not the best. It's not this... it reminds me a lot of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It's just that everything that Rise of the Planet of the Apes does better, it does good. And all the faults of that, like Alien in the movie, James Franco... all that stuff, even though it's kind of a fault where there's not as much, or it's a little neglected in the movie, the characterization or the stereotypical, no, James Franco, you can't do this experiment because I got the money on the mind. I think that's handled a little bit better, and I think that's really I kept seeing comparisons to that, where it's a lot like that movie. Yeah. It's just that it was a lesser version of it.
There was a lot of lies about this movie when it came to the marketing and stuff like that, and I think a lot of people's disappointment's going to fall on that, and I do blame the marketing team for releasing the trailers to be something
which almost makes you wonder: did the core creative team behind the film have to do with marketing?
That's what I heard with Gareth Edwards, was that he was very...
because sometimes they don't even
I know.
It makes you wonder, because Zack Snyder couldn't put together a good enough trailer for Man of Steel as they got.
And it
was kind of like those trailers where it does promise a much different movie than what you get.
Yes, it promises a much more emotionally investing experience.
Much better movie. Yes. Just to be kind of frank about it.
Just a much more serious, focused, character-driven film. Yeah. This is essentially a big budget B movie. Yeah, I think you can accept it as a Godzilla movie, like just as one of the like a total Godzilla film, but with a big name, with a big cast, and a $200 million 2000 special effects film, not a '60s low budget guys in costume film. I do expect more. I want more out of a film starring Bryan Cranston, directed by a guy who's really talented, given a bunch of money. And you have those films to look at and improve upon. So there's a certain standard you should try to exceed. And I wanted to be refreshed with Godzilla, where I was seeing something new, and it really didn't do that for me. Even the spectacle moments of this film, the best parts that Godzilla has, is stuff that I've seen in other Godzilla movies, just not this good of special effects. That's really... I think the director... lacks a lot of creativity at points when it comes to how he presents the monsters and how he presents the fights and how he chooses to shoot them. There's been a lot of anger on the internet. We won't spoil it, but Godzilla's screen time's been a big debate amongst people. Yeah. How that works.
What does he? They say it's roughly 15 minutes. Is that or is it 5?
I've heard 8 minutes.
Yeah, it didn't seem like 15.
No, it definitely
spread out.
No, it's. I will say, at the end of the day, I do think it's a flaw of the movie. Not the idea. I think the director doesn't execute it well, the teasing of Godzilla and how he uses them. I think it's a really clever idea. I do like it. It's
unfortunately, because a lot of the movies, I think, suffer from the fact that it's too much Godzilla.
Yeah, no, I agree.
There's not enough spectacle where it's like 20 minutes of a guy in a suit, which is cool, but it's the same thing.
The problem is this movie isn't engaging enough when it's not about the monsters. The highlight's kind of that, so the fact that you don't really care about Ford too much in his family situation, whenever he's on screen, and this is like 95% of the movie is about Ford, it's kind of hard to get into it fully. You're kind of half engaged and you're kind of waiting.
Fortunately, the movie never really stalls.
No, it's always moving.
Yeah, he's always in a new location doing a different task.
No, it is paced.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, though, because those spectacle moments where Godzilla does do stuff and it's supposed to be kind of an awe moment, I do think those moments lose a lot of their impact because you're just not as invested in the story and characters. Especially, usually when Godzilla shows up, it's very much around a bunch of people you don't know. It's usually a situation that they just randomly cut to. And I think the way the director chooses the shots to show Godzilla and cut to another scene, I think is very poor. I think especially the first appearance of Godzilla, which I won't spoil, but there's a scene where I think is kind of the high point of the movie. It's had this momentum, and I think you're really ready for this moment. And I think the way the director cuts away from it, I think was a very poor choice. I think the idea was good, but I think he could have benefited from showing longer sequences, just not too long, and then going really long at the end. The final fight's not as long as you might expect it to be.
The final fight's possibly 5 minutes.
At the most.
It's something along those
Most
lines.
of the finale, it's not about Godzilla. It's once again about Ford Brody's character and what he's doing. That's most of where the camera's at. That's most of where the story's at. It's very little focus on Godzilla, which I also think was a big mistake watching the film. I think the film could have benefited from a much longer final fight with Godzilla, especially with all the teasing. I think the audience kind of earned... And a lot of it, I think the director, I don't think he was good at fight choreography. I've heard rumors of this. I don't know. I don't want to spread rumors because I don't know. But a lot of people went to theories that they were having a hard time figuring out how to choreograph the monster fights. So they cut away a lot because they couldn't think of interesting ways for them to fight. And I get it, because it's tough. And I don't know the design of Godzilla, because even the cool things he does in this movie is classic moves. He does some of them. They're kind of the highlight. And I don't know, I wish he would have shown things I'd never seen Godzilla do before, really use the CGI, really do stuff with the monster fights. Not quite Pacific Rim, because I don't love that movie either, but I don't know, a little bit.
This movie really was on par with Pacific Rim,
it was.
I'd say. I mean, I really give it the same rating, the same issue. I think Pacific Rim has a lot more of the spectacle type fighting stuff.
I think Pacific Rim satisfies more of what it promises than this movie does.
Yeah, I think that for me, the negative points on Pacific Rim hurt it more than this film.
Yeah,
for
I
me.
think Pacific Rim's more of what it wants to be, and I think this film has a hard time deciding what it is. I think you kind of go into Pacific Rim and know what it is and how you feel about it, but I think this film is... I think that it's a difference between a more successful, experienced director and a non-experienced. I think Del Toro knew the film he wanted to make, and he just made it. And we're kind of mixed on it, what he did, but he made the... I think this director didn't quite know what he was making at points, or... Because I haven't heard an interview with him recently on Empire. He wanted to keep Bryan Cranston's character in the movie more. I'm not going to say what happened, but he's not in it a lot, and he couldn't figure out a way to do it, and... You know, there was a lot of things like that. Like this director had a hard... It seemed like the script, and then he said he regretted watching the movie and not being able to figure out new things. I don't like reading stuff like that. That it reflects the movie too. I think you watch the movie, and I think there is a lack of one focused vision from the filmmaker. Yeah, really, a lot of it does just come down to the script, though. I'm not negative on the director. I think he's very talented. I think the cast is all good. I think whoever wrote this script, I can't remember if it was a screenwriter. I think they hired Frank Darabont to do a rewrite at one point. I really do wish that, I don't know, they would have done another rewrite or something. This did suffer from very typical Hollywood cliche script.
Yeah, it relies on that a lot.
Yeah.
The momentum of the pacing carries most of the movie more than...
Yeah, the filmmaking has to carry the film. Yeah, I'd say that Gareth Edwards isn't a great storyteller yet. And, you know, he's a young director. He's got time. But I think if he makes sequels... he should learn how to do this better.
And within the context of the Godzilla franchise, it's a really exciting time.
Yeah.
Because Godzilla's bigger than he's been in a long time.
No, yeah.
And the sequel, which if Gareth Edwards does return, wants to do Destroy All Monsters, which is important for us to watch. Saw this movie, at least for me. Because I wanted to watch that movie recently. So then when I saw this movie, I could think about what he plans in the sequel
Mm-hmm.
and how it might reflect that movie.
And I especially don't like Godzilla's relationship with the military and humans movie. I think that part's very poor too. What I don't want to spoil, but I don't like how the director chose to introduce Godzilla into the movie and how he fits into the movie. I think that's also very poorly written and set up and edited. I wish Godzilla would have had a better introduction.
I'm not against how it does play in.
Yeah.
It's very much in line with some of the later movies in the original run of Godzilla movies, basically, where Godzilla isn't necessarily a direct threat to the main characters as much as he is.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
But the issue with it, at least for me, was that judging by the trailer, with Ken Watanabe is like, let them fight.
Yeah.
You think that's going to be at the climax or introducing the big fight at the end, when really it's about like 50 minutes into the movie and Godzilla's just hardly shown up, and it's really right off the bat. It's his relationship with the military set up through exposition.
Godzilla just really shows up out of nowhere in this movie. I mean, it's weird. It's a very weird choice. Like he said it like
It's more of a sequel to Godzilla.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Than it's an introduction to the character.
Which I get why you would do that, but it was very misleading, and especially the movie being called Godzilla and being the first Godzilla movie in a long time. It's the fact that most of the movie spends its time focusing on another monster than it does on Godzilla. I don't know if that was a good decision or not, because I don't know if the other monster ends up being ultimately interesting or rewarding by the end of the movie, and I don't know if it was worth spending all that time developing that monster when you could have been developing Godzilla more.
I think they should have done a little bit more of both. I think they should just find a balance between the two.
One gets way more than the other, and I think the one that gets more shouldn't have been the one that got more.
I do like what they were setting up with the monster and its motivation and everything. It's not too original, but I think it's serviceable for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of the design much at all.
No,
I'm very disappointed.
No, I was very disappointed
Unfortunately,
too.
I expect that from Hollywood because they think if we have a giant monster, it has to look this way.
They think the Cloverfield monster is good again. No, very, very disappointed in the enemy monster.
I almost wish they would have just done an original Godzilla monster, because all of those are much more interesting than Muto, at least aesthetically.
Well, I was just very interested in the idea of this being a Godzilla movie, too, where it was him destroying the city and them following him. I was very interested in him being that force of nature that man couldn't control, and man realizing that balance and us trying to control the world that we ultimately don't have a control of. I thought that would have been a very interesting story and way to set up Godzilla with Bryan Cranston's character and his feelings with his son and his wife. I think they could have said a lot about humanity and what it is and what nature is and how the balance between each other. And I think the film ultimately tries to do that. I just don't think it's executed well at all. The themes are never pushed enough. And it's not really subtext because they have characters just, like Ken Watanabe, just blatantly say it in the movie. And the film's themes and all of its character motivations, I feel, are always very much just on the surface. It really
makes you wonder how intentional some of it was, because the filmmakers in it are very articulate.
Yeah.
When it comes to screenwriting and storytelling,
it's just very simple.
They're very aware of what they're doing. And going back to Pacific Rim, clearly Guillermo del Toro knows how to write a character.
Pan's Labyrinth, masterpiece. He knows how to...
But with this movie, I almost get the same feeling in some ways, where I almost wonder if they're trying too hard to reflect Toho.
Yeah.
But if you want to go to the movies and see...
If you had interest in this outside of that, like you saw the trailer and you wanted to go see a really awesome blockbuster, go see a badass Godzilla movie, or thought this was going to be like one of the best movies of the year, I can tell you right now, it's probably not that. Like at the end of the year, you're probably not going to have this on your top 10.
It's nothing you haven't seen before.
There's not one scene, special effects, or action or character that is original in any way, shape. I mean, even going back to like old Hollywood, this is very cliche stuff, the military stuff, and it's fun in that way. You're seeing a very big cliche blockbuster.
It's like, I work with the guy who's a big Godzilla fan, probably more so than we are.
Yeah.
Because he's very active, watches them on at least a weekly basis. I asked him about it. He saw it the night it opened in our town. And he said he really liked it, but he would have preferred it if it was called Muto versus Godzilla.
Yeah.
And that's really how I feel about the movie, is that if they would have just titled it that or something, rather than Godzilla, it would have function much better for what it is in terms of marketing.
Well, I get what the director was trying to do, but the difference between this and like Jaws or Jurassic Park or Alien, the other slow build films, is the plot and the focus of the characters and themes tied into those creatures, and they were always there as a presence. Alien, you always knew with the xenomorphs in the background, the mystery Jaws, you always knew about the sharks from the opening scene, that water was scary, and you got these characters who really got developed their relationship around the shark till it got to the point where they had to fight the shark, and you're so invested in the characters that when they go to get Bruce at the end of the shark, it's a very compelling film. And you've always felt the shark's presence. The shark was always there. Jurassic Park, you always know about dinosaurs in the park from the beginning.
The big comparison that we talked about after seeing the movie was Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which just has more common with in terms of pacing than any of the other movies.
Yes, trying to build to a big emotional spectacle at the end with the character being
It's just that Aaron Taylor Johnson's character is not the same as Richard Dreyfuss is at all. No. He's not nearly as interesting on screen.
The actor doesn't bring,
Yeah, and I don't blame
real or human. He really feels very artificial to me. He's very.
I'd say two-dimensional.
Yeah.
He's not completely one-dimensional.
Where Richard Dreyfuss very much lives in that world, and you believe him as that character.
Yeah, you want to follow that character.
Yeah. You are that character when you watch Close Encounters. It's involving in that way. I think this movie could have done that. I respect that decision. It's just the thing. Those movies don't tease you, and those movies always focus on those things. This film does directly tease you with Godzilla screen time. It teases you, it shows you parts of it, then cuts away, and then Godzilla's never really the focus of the story or what's happening. It's usually Muto or what Brody's doing around Muto. It's rarely about Godzilla, his backstory, who he is, what
makes the film difficult is a reimagining because it doesn't focus on the reimagining.
No.
It focuses more on being a sequel to a film that... Is it a sequel to the original Godzilla that just kind of ignores the other movies?
Yeah.
Is it its own interpretation that takes place in this alternate universe where Godzilla is already established?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's well acknowledged in the movie that the government's aware of Godzilla. There have been attacks before.
No, it's very strange. The movie just throws things at you.
You don't know what universe it takes place in. Is it the Toho universe? Which one is it?
That's my biggest flaw. Is I think the film suffers from really poor, thought-out internal logic. If you know anything about filmmaking, internal logic is so important because that basically creates the tone in the universe of your film, how well your story works, as if your logic in your world makes sense. This film never really picks its logic. It tries to be realistic, but it also just kind of throws in, like he said, it just throws in like, well, how long has Godzilla been around? Why does Ken Watanabe's character
know? Like 1954.
Yeah, and Ken Watanabe's character knows and just knows that he's good, and you know he just knows he's going to help, and they don't really give you much about it. They really just say it to you, and you have to accept it and go with the movie. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the movie's attitude, is just kind of go with it. And if you do, I think it's rewarding in parts. I don't think it, as a whole, it's a rewarding entirely for me. But I think there's parts of it though that really are satisfying. For Godzilla fans and as a blockbuster. I'm just calling down more negative because I was very hyped for this movie for a long time, and I thought it was going to be, I thought it was going to be like one of the best movies I'd seen in a while, and especially after some really disappointing films recently, like the new Spider-Man and stuff. I was hoping this was kind of going to.
I was impressed by it.
Yeah,
I didn't know they could make a movie that bad.
Yeah. I didn't know you could make 8 Spider-Man movies in one.
Yeah, it was impressive.
I went a long time because I wanted to give it when I came out, it was a B- or B, because I do think it's like a B movie. But objectively, in my heart, I very much feel it's like a C+ film. It's a very mediocre, okay movie. But I don't want C+ to be looked as like a negative. But at the end of the day, I kept going back and forth. I kept thinking about it. I don't think it's a great movie, but I think if you go in with the right mindset and expectations and accept it as just a very, very big budget B movie, and fun, and you see a matinee, I think it's a B-. I think it's an okay movie, and it works on that level. But I wouldn't give it more than I don't think it's that great of a film or that great of a Godzilla film either. I think it's very much in the middle of the road in both ways. It's not one of my favorite Godzilla movies, and it's not one of my favorite blockbusters of the last few months.
I would give it a B because I feel like a lot of it's in the heart of a B movie. Mm-hmm. And it's a mixed bag. There's some scenes I would give an A. The first 20 minutes it'd be like A- maybe.
Yeah.
And then after that, some moments that are C, then there's some that goes back to B+. And it never really, it kind of ends up in that middle ground where it really is a B for me. And I think it depends on how you want to look at it. If you look at it as a film, or as, this artistic thing, I do think it's just a mixed bag overall. I think it's a Godzilla movie. It's pretty enjoyable for what it is. And if you see it that way, I think it's a pretty fun movie that you can have a good time with.
Yeah, like I said, we're not too far off. Like, it's a rating, But yeah, you just kind of we both.
It's a very flawed movie. It's also a pretty entertaining movie too, and that's all.
Yeah, it's not a film that's like lacks value.
It's just a little bit of wasted.
Yeah, it's wasted potential.
I'd say for the next one, just make it fun.
Yeah, if you're gonna do B movies, do it. Just commit to it.
Yeah.
Then. Don't try to have your cake and eat it too. This film really does.
I agree, and with Destroy All Monsters, I don't think there's a way to do it in 2 seasons. Unless you go completely Jurassic Park, which I'm personally not that interested in seeing.
No, it's just time to do the crossover with Pacific Rim.
Yeah, and then Jurassic Lost World.
Yeah, Jurassic World. Yeah,
Jurassic World. That's
the theme park with the kaiju's
and then Jaegers. People come to pay and get to punch the.
Yeah, and they get to punch Godzilla.
Yeah,
and Del Toro directs it.